This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
Don't regret it. Don't regret it a bit. This is Wretched. Okay, I regretted it. Candyland is a lot like sin.
Go.
That's right. Candyland is a lot like sin. Had this brainiac idea. Candyland, it's located on Wabasha Street in downtown St. Paul. They make caramel corn. Their cheese corn and their popcorn with the butter on it. It's a Chicago mix to die for. So I had this idea to order a can of it. That's right. I ordered a vat o' popcorn. Got it. It was about 6.5 gallons worth of popcorn. Let me just tell you something. That's a lot of popcorn. And wow, did I mow it down. And I indulged so much last night. And am I feeling guilty? You know, I actually am. And that's why Candyland is a lot like sin. You tell yourself in advance, okay, I probably shouldn't do this, but it won't hurt a lot. I mean, one little popcorn binge, how could that possibly hurt? And then you do it and you kind of go, oh, I don't feel so good about myself. That's why Candyland is like sin. This is Wretched Radio. I would like to go back in time because that's Christians, I mean by that we are told we're on the wrong side of history. Oh, yeah? The president of the Christian Thinkers Society is Dr. Jeremiah J. Johnston. That family, they were like the Duggars. They liked the letter J. He wrote a book called Unimaginable, What Our World Would Be Like Without Christianity. It is from Bethany House. It was distributed in December 2017. He takes a look at the world before Christianity spread around Western civilization, citing ancient letters and historical records by non-Christian civilians and historians. It paints a picture of the Greco-Roman world. Remember, we do love our Greco-Roman world, don't we? If you don't think that Plato is alive and well, that Socrates is not still being taught and studied and his worldview being implemented, those guys still have an influence. What kind of culture, what kind of world did they live in? Let's take a look, because there was a whole lot of ugliness. A fourth of the population was sick at any given time. There was a lot of physical violence, much suffering. A quarter of the population were slaves and sold naked like animals in markets. Life expectancy was only 20 years of age. What? You live to be 20? Whew. And infant girls and babies born with abnormalities were routinely exposed to the elements and wild animals to their deaths. That was normal. Remember, a world without Christianity, women and children always suffer. Who's on the wrong side of history here? Who is the one that really, really cares for women and children? Are we not seeing it already? Aren't we seeing a Greco-Roman world bubbling up to the surface? How's about the number of... I was flipping by. I think I was on my way to the Australian Open. How's about that Roger Federer? And this caught my attention. There was a woman crying. That caught my attention because her daughter had committed suicide. I was in. Why? Mom finds in her trunk of the deceased girl a diary. And she read it. And daughter had... I think it was Michigan State University. Sound familiar? Michigan State University, she had been, she claimed, raped by multiple fellows. Football team. Nothing was done about it. Nothing. They brought one of the fellows in for investigation, trusting that he was innocent in that, but they let him go. But that fellow started to talk about what the climate was like in the locker room of Michigan State University. I wouldn't even want to sort of paint the picture for you, let alone use the language of what was done. The treatment of women, abhorrent. And it's not just Michigan State University. This was a report from ESPN, and they came back to the desk, and the woman said it's a systemic problem. Not every single football program, but it is a systemic problem of the football players treating women in abysmal ways. Why? That's a non-Christian world where Christianity is the predominant force. Women and children simply do better. Is it perfect? Of course not. There's still the fall, which accounts for bad behavior still. But as a rule, you remove Christianity and the quality of living for women and for children. Pew! By the way, I would like to suggest to you, I'm still putting this together, so this is in its formative stages, and it's more of a visual presentation that we'll probably do on Wretched TV. Been thinking about the women who went to the women's rally with their pink hats. I trust you know what those were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about, now, Irene Sedler, or something like that, from Poland. She volunteered to go to work in a concentration camp, and so she would bring in her tools every day, and then she would leave every day with her tools and with her dog. Why? Because in her toolbox, she would put a child who was in the concentration camp in the bottom of her toolbox and then roll the child out and would have the dog trained to bark at the guards so that when she came by, they were like, just go, 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 because they didn't want to deal with the dog and the dog with the barking. If the child was crying, they couldn't hear the child. 250 kids. She snuck out of a concentration camp, saved their life. I believe it was 2007 or 8. She was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, but she lost to Al Gore for giving a lecture on global warming. We need to be hearing more stories like that. Again, this is another visual story, but it's a woman, and I'm sorry for not knowing your name. If you happen to be hearing this, she has had 8 children, bio children, and she and her family now adopt kids that are terminally ill. She brings them into her home until they die. And this particular story was showing this woman with a child who had been born with brain damaged child who could not appear to communicate in any way, shape, or form. We don't know what is going on behind those eyes, but they treat that child as if that child is their own and as if that child had cognitive abilities. So they loved the child. They took care of the child, ate dinner with them, even though he got wheeled up to the table with a feeding tube, was not eating the food of the family, but nevertheless was at the table. And there was a story done on this woman. And I think of the Polish woman, and I think of this woman, and then I think of the women with their pink hats. And I'm just thinking, we need to not grow weary of doing good, and we need to keep doing what Christianity does and showing the difference between the two worldviews. These angry, these women who couldn't even articulate what they were doing there and why, other than they hate white European males, which has a worldview behind it that's pernicious. We need to show the difference and contrast the difference and let the world just see the difference, because there is a difference between a Christian world, rightly understood, and a pagan world. We're seeing the resurgence of a pagan world. Do we think that it's not going to regress to the level that we're reading about from this book from JJJ? No. It's going to go back to it already is. Oh, it looks more sophisticated. It maybe doesn't appear to be quite as bad. Consider pornography. Consider what these football players are doing to women. This is not progressing. Who's on the wrong side of history here? I ask you. By today's standard, life back then, this is from Jeremiah J. Johnston. Life was, and this is not meant as a vain swear word, it was hell on earth. By the way, you can use that word in its right context. It's when you use it vainly, as in without any meaning behind it. Hell is something that should be held, if in a sense, in high regard. Why? Because it's real and it's sober and it's an actual location and it's awful. And to gut it of its meaning is to use it in a vain way, but it's used properly here. Poverty, sickness, and premature death, domestic violence, economic injustice, slavery, and political corruption were the given of life. Let me read that list again. Poverty. How we doing with that, LBJ? How's that war going on? How's it about around the globe? Sickness. Premature death, domestic violence. It's going on all the time, and mostly, not exclusively, but mostly against women. I received an email sent to ID@wretched.org of a woman who had been sexually abused. And she said she hasn't met a woman who has not been abused by a man in some way, shape, or form. In some way, shape, or form. Now, that's one person's understanding of the issue, but economic injustice, slavery, political corruption were the given of life in a pagan world. Now that Christianity is being shoved into the closet, or worse, can we expect anything less around the corner? And the answer to that is I don't see any reason to. So what do we do about this? I would like to suggest to you, stay-at-home mom, don't stop being a stay-at-home mom because the world screams different. Volunteer, you keep volunteering. You keep serving at your church. You keep preaching the gospel. Keep evangelizing. Keep being a great neighbor who takes care of your property and does kind things. Let's be Christians and let the world see the difference. This is Wretched Radio. Shout out to our gospel partners. It is your ongoing monthly support that allows us to do Wretched Radio every single day and provide the broadcast, the entire program, for free to anybody on iTunes, Android, or at our website. Thank you for being a gospel partner. If you enjoy or benefit from Wretched Radio, would you please consider joining those partners so that we can continue to preach the gospel? Simply visit wretched.org.